Hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. It's so nice to have you back where you belong. You're looking swell.
Okay, finally. Got the music to fade out properly. Hello, Charles.
Great to see you, Jason. Advances all the
Likewise.
time.
Sorry?
Advances all the time.
I'm trying. Kaizen is the general theory, you know? Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Charles, because there is one important advance that's recently been made, and that has to do with Patreon. You know, we're going to keep, of course, Sunday with Charles as freely available to everyone, partly because we just want as many people as possible to see it, but also because Crowdsource the Truth is still dedicated to bringing tons of free information to people. But of course, I need a way to run the business and keep the company going and all that. So I've very recently, as I think I might have told you, I've implemented this Patreon only on Patreon shows, and we've got a couple of good ones on there now. We've got shows with Quinn Michaels, and we've got shows with Kevin Shipp, and people can become patrons for as little as $1 a month and watch those shows. And what we've just added that's really exciting is for our $5 per month and higher sponsors, people get access to this great Discord chat program. And so even during Sunday with Charles, people can log on to Discord and they can be chatting without getting hassled by all these trolls. And this is a really exciting way to monetize the work that we're doing without having to subject viewers to ads or being beholden to Google and YouTube and all of these. You know, even President Trump was tweeting that Twitter is shadow banning people. People can now chat and do all kinds of things without the fear of being shadow banned. So that's an interesting development there.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And people can just go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the show.
Good idea.
Now, Charles, I've prepared a graphic for this week's show. I know that you and some of the various members of the vast right-wing conspiracy are very fond of the different graphics that I put together, so it's become a little bit of a game each week with me trying to, you know, one-up the previous graphic. I'm quite pleased with this one.
No, this is really, really good. I mean, it shows a Vita Perón, I mean, Hillary Clinton there.
Yes.
What, is that a scorpion around her neck?
You know what? I don't know. That's from the original poster. And of course, when we modify these movie posters, that's parody, so it's always covered by fair use because we are fundamentally changing them and using artwork to parody public figures who are obviously very well known. We've got former President Bill Clinton. We've got the highly allegedly corrupt Bob Mueller, and of course Barack Obama in the background. So these are all, or I should say some of the key players in the Folly known as the Clinton Foundation.
Is that John Kerry?
Not John Kerry.
It looks
no,
a little
but
like
we
him.
could have added John Kerry. That would have been a good idea, perhaps.
These are the fake news people in the background?
The fakeettes.
The fakeettes.
Dancing in the background.
And the thing I noticed about it, and really it is wonderful, I wish that this kind of thing was high enough resolution that we could do posters and put a slew of them up, because I mean, you've got such a repertoire now. This is, I think, our 91st show, and I mean, you probably have to get a 3-bedroom apartment to hang them.
Well, I mean, as you pointed out, they do look pretty good blown up on this TV. So while he's sitting right here, I can see some pixelation and things, but we could print them out on posters, and that might be a good idea to add as a reward for some of our sponsors, custom signed posters and things like that.
Yeah.
So
but this truly is phenomenal. And I would also point out, I think that in that shot, Robert Mueller looks eerily like Mark Rich. And I only noticed it because Mueller had Mark Rich, of course, is still dead, but Robert Mueller has a full head of hair, whereas Mark Rich did not. And it's the first time I've looked at Mueller without noticing his hair. And when you do that, they do look.
You're right.
A little bit similar. Now,
we could have a look at Mark Rich later perhaps. But, without further ado, Charles, why don't we jump right into the slide presentation for this week? I know you've prepared a comprehensive presentation as always.
Yes, this actually, a somber but in some ways nice note, this would have been my mother's, let me get this straight, 93rd birthday would have been today.
Oh.
And she's not with us, but she's with us in spirit.
Right.
And this show is really, it came together remarkably well. What we try to do for you, the viewership, is to come up with something that's fresh and looks at important issues of the current week and the week ahead. And so we tend to kind of, if we go back to the...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we tend to talk a lot, Jason and I, about what we think is going to be important, and then an idea will pop into one or both of our heads as to what movie or play or book to parody. And then we watch the course of the news through the week, and we do a lot of work on Saturday to try to weave together the themes that are really important. And then we wait and see what happens overnight and in the morning on Sunday, and that's how we're able to put this together in a way that I don't think any other much better financed operation can do, just because Jason and I are each in a position where we can do what we want to do on Friday night and Saturday night and Sunday. And a lot of these very senior talents that are out there, have families and responsibilities, and they can't say, to their spouse or whatever, they can't say, Sunday morning, actually what I want to do is spend all my time on YouTube and put this thing together, and then at 3 p.m. I want to do this, so we can't do anything with the kids, on Sunday.
But Charles, is that a weave? It looks so real.
It is real. But
sorry.
That's quite all right.
I sometimes, my timing is thrown. I have those jokes ready, and I'm waiting for the moment to put them in there.
Yeah. Anyway, what's left of it is indeed real.
We're weaving these things together.
Yeah. So what I noticed was Hillary Clinton's propensity and Bill Clinton's propensity to think that what they're doing in a given week, stepping out in one way or another, we'll tell you what we're talking about in a second, is really an inside joke, and the people at the head of the class who know everything, the globalists, they're really going to think it's neat. We're going to show you that what they did last week was so stupid in a second. But we had signs last week, ample. We've had many signs that the steps that Donald Trump, the Trump administration, have been taking to cut regulations, cut taxes, get rid of these absurd bureaucracies, it was in fact not offering crumbs, as Pelosi likes to say, to the American public, but real jobs, real incomes, and not really, it's actually pinching the very rich, particularly people who live in New York and high-tax states, Donald Trump's taxes, but for the overwhelming majority of people at the bottom and the lower and the middle end of American society, the benefits to those people by the changes that have already been made in the tax code, some other things that are going to come forward, and this tax cut 2.0, which I think will get passed later this year, and then the infrastructure plan. I mean, the benefits that the Trump administration has managed to get across the line in face of the stiffest resistance. I mean, Donald Trump did not even get a honeymoon period. I mean, they were on him the evening of the election, when Hillary Clinton, 2 days before the election, when she had to cancel the fireworks.
Right.
Remember that?
Yes.
She probably was thinking she'd get him delivered to Trump Tower, But when they immediately went after Trump, president-elect, and he didn't. I would argue he hasn't had, a minute.
Yeah.
It's just been nonstop resistance. Everything he comes up with, people on the resistance or against. So just when you see a 4.1% real increase, i.e. after inflation increase in the growth of the largest economy in the world, you see that, you have, mainstream press, all sorts of people, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, everyone saying this is a disaster, the world's gonna blow up. I mean, it's just.
Why would it be a disaster? Don't we want economic growth in the United States? What do they even say in their?
Well, it's almost like the obverse of the coin, the other side of the coin. When Barack Obama was elected, it was, immediately, the heavens have opened, and the Messiah is here, and everything's fantastic, and and the economy literally went off a cliff just as he was taking office, and you can't blame him for that. That's one thing I do not blame him for that. I blame George W. Bush for that, and Bill Clinton, and H.W. Bush for that. But so
it didn't exactly make it better.
Who?
Obama.
What I'm saying is, he comes in. He's got a much heavier lift when he arrived than Donald Trump had, because the world literally was blowing up. I mean, the financial markets were blowing up. He got a lot of help, Barack Obama, from the central banks around the world who pushed interest rates down, from the governments around the world that threw money out the window and burned it on stupid projects.
TARP
and all that stuff. But that being said, this guy, President Obama could send illegal guns into Mexico to wait and see whether they would come back in the United States. So
that was so stupid.
And that was a genius move, right? Or Obamacare, which is an absurd idea, the way they did it, or Benghazi. I mean, just to mention three things, not to mention Lois Lerner and all these other things. And the press was like, it's a scandal-free administration,
right?
And then you flip the switch. Donald Trump gets elected, and Sean Hannity. I don't know that he watches our show, but he took a page out of something we've been saying. I've been using much bigger numbers. I've been saying that you could give every American $1 billion, and the mainstream press would complain about it. Because Donald Trump found a cache of gold, let's say, in some distant planet, and the last 15 months he's brought it
the
back.
Space Force can bring it back.
Right, and the resistance would say that's outrageous, and Hannity used 30 million.
You just reminded me of something. In the broadcast with Kevin Shipp the other day, I mistakenly told Kevin that I thought you had told me that the number that Putin quoted was accurate, of 400 million, but you've now since then told me, and I want to correct my earlier statement, it's 400,000 that Bill Browder's Hermitage Capital sent to the Clinton Foundation, right?
Well, I don't honestly know, see, because no one really knows. But I've heard different people from Russian media are now saying it is 400,000. But that, as some people like to say, begs the question. It's the wrong question to ask. The Clinton Global Initiative, which is something we've talked about in the past, is an illegal operation that began in 2005, where a whole bunch of projects were concocted behind closed doors, out of sight of the real media or any media, investigative reporters. There's never been an accounting for all that money, yet they claim that hundreds of billions of dollars of projects have happened around the world, many of them with potential Russian counterparties. So we don't really know. Vladimir Putin may have been wrong narrowly on the issue of Hermitage or Browder, but on the question of how much oligarch money came to Clinton finance projects via the Global Initiative and other ways, we don't know that number yet. And I would argue it's probably way higher than 400 million. So.
Also weird how Oleg Deripaska was financing FBI missions to get Robert Levin out of Iran. Like, what?
Yeah.
How does that work out? But I don't know.
So,
anyway.
But the headline here, it should be obvious. If we think, back to say 2001, we think about the mega billionaires today. The Jeff Bezos, the largest, richest guy in the world. Certainly not the largest guy in the world, but the richest.
It'd be funny if he just started eating until he became the largest guy.
I don't even think that would work. But he's made a lot of money disrupting the retail industry. I mean, in a dramatic fashion.
They own Whole Foods now.
I mean, he's just disrupting everything, right? And the Google guys disrupting advertising. Right. Twitter disrupting advertising.
And broadcasting. Google is allowing that. And
Facebook and all that. Yeah. So you think about it, that's all about disruption, okay? We've done these numbers. One day we'll do a show and go back over it. But when you look at the size of government spending, all in government spending, state, local, federal spending, going back, say, 2001 to the present, government spending under Bush, under Obama, and even under Trump has just been skyrocketing, right? Our government is the biggest single one-time expense that any of us has. We only see it in the income tax return. If you have property taxes, you'll see it. Most people don't understand it. Everything you buy has a lot of taxes in it. The suppliers have to pay taxes, the intermediate people who fool around with the product pay taxes, the distributors pay taxes, there's
Sales
taxes on all the
tax.
wages, all the components. So when you add it all up, it's death by a million cuts in the traditional way in which this economy works. And yet, we're all enamored of the people who are disrupting retailing to make it, cheaper to get something delivered, tomorrow morning, anything you want right downstairs, no problem. You don't have to leave this place.
Yeah.
You can't do that with government. Well, we should be able to bring the cost of government down, but we haven't been able to do it. And
Maybe Amazon could buy the government.
But the people, there's a blood moon now, which is an unusual moon, and these globalist cultists, they see Donald Trump. I guess they got it before he was elected. That maybe Donald Trump wouldn't be so happy with the EU and the UN. Parenthetically, I love the way the story. We didn't have it up this week, but there's a story that the UN team, the Secretary General of the UN, is pleading with the donor countries because suddenly they figured out they need more money. I'm sure Donald Trump's there. Yeah. I'm gonna make that a top priority for my last day in office. Okay, in my second term.
Right.
But anyway, so just when we see true signs of progress, these idiots are baying at the moon, saying, "Oh, Donald Trump is a disaster." I could tell the story that I was with someone at dinner the other night, and the people came down right next to us. This is after the 4.1% GDP print. These were, I think, NYU graduate students, and they were saying to each other, one person said to the other two, "Is it just me, or do you both feel the same nightmare that I'm living every day under Donald Trump?" Like,
What's the nightmare? I don't get it.
I don't know. I guess they're tired of winning.
The nightmarish world where North Korea has stopped launching nuclear missiles and that Russia and the United States are talking about diplomatic negotiations rather than war over Syria.
And where jobs are coming flooding back into the country.
It's
and
horrible.
Tax rates are going down, the stock market's high.
Oh, the nightmare.
That's right.
What will we do next?
Yeah. So if we jump right into the next page, our standard.
Here we go. Whoop. Sorry
going
about that.
backwards.
Not going back. We're going one step forward. Here
There
we
we
go.
go. So I know you're getting, every week you're getting new subscribers and new viewers, and we like to remind everybody, one of the great benefits we have as Americans is the right to express our opinion freely. And a lot of work has gone into this program by not simply me and Jason, but other people have been helping out. And to all of you who are helping, we really appreciate that. Our approach is to lay these arguments out, have just a friendly chat with Jason and sometimes other guests, but we provide these schedules free of charge so that you can think about it. There's a lot of information to absorb. I'm meeting more and more people who are saying, before you started doing this, we just sort of took everything at face value. We didn't check anything, and we didn't look behind what the talking heads were saying. And frankly, most people don't really, myself included, until about 2003 or 4, I didn't spend that much time trying to understand GDP and international economic stuff.
Wow.
And a lot, frankly, American history. I didn't know that much American history. So I've had a little bit of time to think about it, and so now I think I may know a bit more than I used to know. And we try to lay out, the fruits of all this work for people. So if you want to get more familiar with our sources and how we come up with this stuff, follow the links in your own free time.
Sources and methods, Charles.
That's right. We don't redact them.
Exactly what Clapper and Brennan don't want you to know about.
Right. But we could probably hit this playlist. Which
Yes, absolutely. Love the playlist. So Charles, we've done, this is our 91st video in the Sunday with Charles and closing in sort of dual series, and people can find all of them here in this handy playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, which is the original home of Crowdsource the Truth. We've got all of them listed in there, and it's a convenient way, whether you are enjoying these at home in your leisure time or conducting an investigation to incarcerate the most powerful and sophisticated cabal of international criminals in the history of humankind. There's now a convenient repository for all of your Sunday with Charles viewing.
was very well done, Jason, and very well organized. I would say, I mean, I guess you went out there to Hollywood, right?
Yeah, I've
And
been
you
there.
spent time in Hollywood. You got the awards to prove it, and
Yeah.
you spent a lot of good time out there.
Yep.
You probably haven't been to Bollywood.
I have not been to India. My work in motion picture production did take me all over the world, but India is one country I've never been to.
So now we're here in New York. You got Hollywood, Bollywood, and this could either be Gollywood for Goodman Wood or Jollywood for Jason Wood.
I haven't been to Dollywood either, which I think is in Tennessee or
It is.
something.
It is, yeah.
You can go and ride on some Dolly Parton themed stuff.
Yeah, but actually, just we don't need to bring it back up. But what's interesting to me about that playlist is, if you had told me, it's now almost exactly a year ago when we started on this,
Yeah.
that we would do 91 on average 2+ hour things and get this kind of viewership, both for the Sunday with Charles stuff and then for your wider thing, I would have said, you're crazy. But
You might have said that anyway, Charles.
That's
But
probably
you're very
true.
popular. A lot of people following you on Twitter at Charles Ortel.
thank
and
you.
that number keeps growing despite the shadow banning that President Trump is going to be looking into. And our friend Jared Beck may be bringing a class action suit against Twitter. I think people just can't get enough of Charles Ortel. So they've got the option of going to charlesortel.com and staying current with all of your research and data that you have there. And there's a lot of different venues that you can, the fans are clamoring for more Charles.
Thank you. But what I was referring to here about Hillary Clinton, I mean, I saw this first one, and this is an example of, if you hit the first link, over the top lunacy. Okay, this is somebody who, Hillary Clinton, and I'm sure she didn't just happen by the set of Hello Dolly by accident. And she shows up, gets a standing ovation, and here's this idiot, whoever Eric Thomas
It
is.
looks like she's resurrected Salvador Dali. Who is that guy?
And what is she wearing?
Well, I guess the picnic tablecloth got dirty at the other event. So.
I mean, it's just.
Look at these people all smiling to be standing around with a horrendous criminal. Would you put Charles Manson there? Would they smile like that? I don't think he killed nearly as many people as the actions of Hillary Clinton have been responsible for.
It's amazing. And this is some sycophant saying, please forward all my mail to this photo of Hillary Clinton and Bette Midler. I live here now. Okay, this guy's so excited about this picture.
Oh my
I mean, how do you write something like this? How does it get published?
I just don't know.
It's just, I'm sorry, it's absurd.
Yeah, we need to change the topic. This is.
All right, so this happened, right? This actually happened. If we go back into the slide,
Right.
this happened at almost the same time. And this is really God stepping out and saying, you know what?
Oh, yes, this was hilarious.
His wife's watched at a musical getting a standing O, and all these sex workers at the International AIDS Conference in Amsterdam are giving the guy a really, really hard time. And speaking of hair, what the hell's with his hair? Is he now blonde?
It's just white, but
It looks blondish to me.
very appropriate speaker for this event. I can't think of too many people that have more experience with angry prostitutes than Bill Clinton.
But to think of it, I mean, this guy could have been, as I say here, he was saying he didn't want to be the first lady. If Hillary won, he was going to call himself the first laddie. Imagine if she'd been president of the United States and Bill had gone to this conference and these prostitutes had done what I mean, it would just be, it's too funny. So then we have this, this is really a very sad story. It's a disgusting story. This guy, Ronan Farrow, of course, is Mia Farrow's son. And
With Frank Sinatra.
Huh?
With Frank Sinatra.
Is that right?
Well, he's Woody Allen's son, but take a look at Rowan Farrow,
is that
take a
right?
look at Woody Allen, and take a look at Frank Sinatra.
All right. Whatever. But but he's the one who broke the Harvey Weinstein story.
Yeah.
And now here's this, and after he broke that story, the head of CBS, Les Moonves, however you pronounce his name, who until last Friday was a very powerful man. I suspect he's not going to remain very powerful for long. This is a massive story And I actually read read online the piece, and I mean, there's just too many allegations on the record and off the record that are similar of, outrageous behavior by somebody who really had until Friday the ability to make or break careers of, for decades across Hollywood.
Yeah.
And the big point for me on this, it's bad enough and it's unfortunate, what happened to these actors, but the culture at CBS, is just so badly wrong. I mean, you have Charlie Rose, you have multiple senior executives. Clearly, they saw what Les Moonves was doing and say, well, if he can do it, that's how we roll.
The fish stinks from the head.
Exactly, and the problem with that, though, is take a step back and let's go back over the Obama years. Remember what happened? You had what's that? Ben Rhodes, the guy who could not get a security clearance after Barack Obama won, before he was inaugurated. He was turned down for a security clearance. His brother, Rhodes, and this guy was he wasn't the head of the National Security Council, but he was on the National Security Council at a very senior role, because Obama just said, okay, you didn't pass under Bush? We'll let you, come on in. You got experience delivering pizza. But the real thing is that Ben Rhodes' brother was the president of CBS News. And the number of people inside the Obama administration, now in the Trump administration a little bit of the same, but Trump, it's more Fox people who are but there are connections through Susan Rice to entertainment, connections with Ben Rhodes and other.
Rahm Emanuel and his brother Ari.
Right. And so, this is something for all the same people in the mainstream press who are belly aching about Donald Trump. I mean, they got some explaining to do here. I mean, some majorly explaining to do, because the power in that entertainment industry is that if you want to go in that way, a giant like CBS can say, all right, here's your TV show, here's your series, here's your special, here's your special deal, and here's your book deal with Simon & Schuster. I mean, you could, if you want to take somebody from obscurity and make them very powerful and rich, all of a sudden you could do that. And conversely, if you've got somebody who thought they were powerful and rich and well connected, you could change their lives like that. And that's what this article tells me. I think this article deserves a lot of scrutiny. And I'm, to take a page out of Hillary Clinton's book, I am sick and tired of, people like Les Moonves casting aspersions on Harvey Weinstein when, he's even worse than Harvey Weinstein, it would seem.
Interesting.
So then we have, this is really sad to watch, this one. I mean, I think it is tough enough to hold a responsible position. We could debate whether being in the House of Representatives is a place where there are a lot of responsible people. But it's tough enough at age 28, and I can remember being age 28, it's tough enough to try to take down a serious position when you know what you're talking about.
Right.
But when you're an idiot about economics and geopolitics, I mean, this person in the last week said that Donald Trump has increased military spending by $700 billion.
She just made that up, didn't she?
No, well, and got it a little, math, not her forte. I mean, this is economics and politics major. Donald Trump took military spending from something like $700 billion to $712 billion. So he increased it 12, by a number. But he certainly didn't increase it by $700 billion.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
Right.
And so this person, the opposite of Trump syndrome, right? It's this person knocks off Crowley, who was the incumbent Democrat. We could debate whether Crowley was any good, but he was rumored to be a candidate to be Speaker of the House. I mean, he had been in Congress for a while. She, in a surprise victory, upsets him, and immediately, the biggest idiot in the Democratic Party is the current chairman, Tom Perez. He immediately says that this 28-year-old is the future of the Democratic Party on the basis of nothing.
Right.
But she hasn't even won an election yet. She won a primary campaign. Right? Yeah. But so, I mean, this is very noteworthy for a number of reasons. Far be it from me to give the Democratic Party advice, because anything I say they probably won't want to do. So,
like
let them
hell.
embrace this. I mean, To see, you will see it'll be even better than what happened on election night 2016. To see the talking heads explode, the people who live in New York and LA and know everything, and we Trump people who like what Trump is doing, we're idiots. We don't get it. This is the future of America. It's democratic socialism. When pressed to explain what democratic socialism is, she cannot even do that.
Wow.
And she is somebody who majored in politics and economics at George Washington and actually was graduated from there.
Wow. So that's pretty crazy. She really, hasn't even prepared for that Trevor Noah interview if she's going up there and not knowing what her own agenda is. I don't know what to say about that.
Well, imagine how well she's going to do when she gets into the bathtub with Flozell. Remember that?
Is that the Fruit Loops lady?
Yeah.
People would tune in to see that.
Oh my God, I would certainly not tune in to see that. So this one here is incredible. This is on Yahoo. I used to like Yahoo.
No, that's
and it is gone. It's really gone into cloud cuckoo land.
Well, that's where Michael Itzikoff published the information about the dossier that was used to verify the dossier.
I know, it's a great plan. This dossier bears an uncanny resemblance to this dossier. That means it's obviously credible.
There's a Xerox machine at Yahoo. Whoops, we just went to the wrong thing. Sorry.
So this article seriously tries to allege, and who is this idiot David Knowles, that Trump, okay, somebody who bested, the Bush machine with $100 million, and I guess 16 or 17 others. I forget if there were 18 or 17 candidates, but he rose to the top in his first attempt at electoral politics. He beat the Bush machine, he beat the Never Trump or Romney machine, and he beat the Clinton machine with the Obama machine behind it, and the U.S. government attempting to rig the primary and the general election. He beat all that.
It's amazing, really.
Right, with no experience in politics, and we should be fearful about other people who want to come out of the business world and try to engage in politics, because politicians have been so successful ever since 1988, when they thrust globalism upon us, attempted to destroy national boundaries, destroy export-oriented industries that are so vital in this country. We should love these people and be fearful. This is the tone of this article. How they get that through an editor is just beyond me. It's just brain damaged.
It's just funny to think about. At a certain point, you could have just said Yahoo News, and someone would be like, that can't possibly be a serious source.
Yeah.
Yahoo's for news.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also have this guy.
Your favorite company.
This guy, the Harwood file, John Harwood. I don't know what's wrong with John Harwood. I don't know what his background is, but he's another person who's extremely reliable. It's very valuable to find somebody who's always wrong, right? And this is an example of somebody who's always wrong. When it comes to this idea, he's sitting there working for, CNBC, which at one point was the #1 business news network, but despite being #1, and I actually have enjoyed going on there from time to time, it has a very small audience. And, John Harwood, just is always wrong when it comes to the Washington, D.C. political beat, which is rather unfortunate because that's what he's in charge of, the Washington, D.C. political beat. He just always gets it wrong. And he missed Trump. He missed, he just doesn't see the obvious needs for disruption. And yet, where does he work? He works for the #1 business network that extols the virtues of disruption in the private sector and has on all the disruptors regularly on CNBC to praise them. But when it comes to Trump trying to do the same thing in politics,
nah.
Yeah.
They don't like to do that.
Yet. So yeah, this one is also, this is pretty sad. The therapists and the mind doctors, they're doing a land office business because so many of these people, these snowflakes and others, coddled snowflakes, are going in. They used to go once a week. Now they're going 3 times a week, 5 times a week for this Trump derangement syndrome. And, where we live, in Manhattan, you see these people. You can walk down the street and you hear them talking out loud about it. You know?
Well, California, I think, is worse.
California is yeah, and here's Matt Kwong.
Number of people in LA won't talk to me anymore.
Is that right?
A number. Couple. Two,
Couple.
three.
Just,
Is he going to blow us all up? That's the first
I know,
question this
I
guy
know.
is asking. Oh, but they're talking about him.
it's just, it's sad.
Truly is,
It
Charles.
truly is sad. So yeah.
Whoops.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Itchy trigger finger there. So this is very interesting. I don't know how many of our viewers actually read this type of stuff. Maybe you don't, Jason, but just as you've been so kind to introduce me to entertainment rags that are helpful, like Variety and others that they're quite useful. These are this is the way economic data gets released in the United States. There's the Bureau of Economic Analysis, part of the Department of Commerce, and a long press release like this is prepared, and you see up here it's embargoed until release at 8:30 a.m., which means a large number of insiders in the government know this before it's printed.
And they could trade on it.
Well, no, they should not be.
I mean, they
could.
want them. That's why it's embargoed, so
Right.
they cannot.
Right, exactly. But this gives you. I mean, if we just go to the simple graph here, okay, this is the percent change in GDP from the preceding quarter, right? So you actually see under, I don't know what happened here in Q3 2014, that would be the quarter that ends September 30th, why it was such a strong quarter, okay? And this is right before the 2014 elections. You know, very good economic news, growth is almost 5%. And it was, but you see by Q3 in 15, it was 1%. Q3 in 16, it was only less than 2%. And you look at the trend here from Q3 2016 to the present, it's clearly going like this. It's clearly an uptrend, right? And now this is, we're not going to spend a lot of time on what GDP is and the flaws in GDP and how you got to be very careful with the number. The headline way of thinking about GDP is like a scorecard.
Gross domestic product.
And almost the same as gross, domestic output. So it's how much the economy produces each year in total. And we are by far, as we'll show you in a second, the biggest economy in the world by a major league factor. So for a big economy, in choppy circumstances,
4%, yeah, it's a lot.
it's massive. It's massive.
And didn't Obama fail to receive whole number growth throughout his presidency? It was always fractional percentages?
No, he averaged, I think, less than 2% in his 8 years. But and the problem with that is it's not just that the average is low. The problem is the economy was like this from, let's say, 82 to 98. And then it was more like that, Jason.
I'm looking.
Lower growth. And then from 2007-8, it went.
That's what I was looking at, is to make sure we had your arm in the shot.
So to get back to this trajectory is the goal.
Yeah.
And we should be able to do that. And the way we're going to do that is by taking off the shackles that have been put in place on this economy by all these absurd programs that that Obama put in, the regulations, the crazy laws that haven't worked, the spending that didn't make sense.
So you don't think it's a good idea to send $130 billion in cash to the largest state sponsor of terror?
I would need a good two years to think about that. Yeah, it's like, welcome to Crazy Land. He wants to do what?
Yeah. It is pretty nuts.
It really is. So if we...
Sorry.
It's okay. This is really very interesting. This man has a slightly unfortunate name, Arthur Laffer, but he is a very smart person. There's something called the Laffer curve that he invented, and he was the person who was credited, I think, the most with inspiring Ronald Reagan's administration to do what it did to bring tax rates down.
What did they do to bring it? Laissez-faire economics?
Well, no, it was just that tax rates were so high that when you look as an investor about should you hire somebody, should you invest in this country, It just, there were so many problems with the way the tax system was organized that people just wouldn't make investments, and people would delay selling shares that had been appreciated because the tax rates were so high. And so what most people don't get is that the wealth in this economy is far bigger than the annual output. So the estimated total wealth.
What do you mean?
So the value of what you own, not your income, I'm not getting into you personally, but the value of what you own is so much greater than your total income in a given year. So that, there are a lot of people out there that might have, an income of $400,000, but they have $50 million in securities that, if they sell it under Obama, they pay a high tax. If you change the tax rate and you lower it, it's a much lower tax, so people will book those gains, and the revenues that come in by a change in behavior are very, very large. And that's what happened when John F. Kennedy lowered tax rates. That's what happened when Reagan. Arthur Laffer appreciated that, and Arthur Laffer has written this piece in The Hill, you don't have to bring it back up there, saying, this is working. It really is working. Now, on a negative sign, this story, which I just saw this morning, again in Yahoo, this is really preposterous thinking. Now, in the UK, and we did fight a little bit of a war with them in 1776, I remember it well, they have a different attitude towards press freedom. They don't have press freedom.
Right.
The way we do.
Well, they threw Tommy Robinson in jail for covering that story.
And now they're saying, people are arguing that maybe some tech firms should be made liable for, quote, harmful and misleading material on the websites. Now,
well, CNN would go out of business in a day.
With New York Times as well.
Yeah.
But the point is, yes, there should be, people should be encouraged to have double, when it comes to news, double and triple sourced articles. When it comes to opinion, which, so much of the mainstream press is opinion. What we're doing is opinion right now. And how do you decide? Are we going to have a whole bunch of resistors, as they're trying to do, vetting? I think Facebook is trying to vet content that comes on with using the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is an absurd organization. Is not a charity. It's technically a charity. It is not functioning like a charity. They're partnering with this hard left fake charity to, probably take our content down if they find it. And the second you go down that track of saying, well, rather than have many, many newspapers of competing views and blogs, and you don't have to watch, you should watch Crowdsource the Truth, and especially this show, but you don't have to. If you want to go watch some loony land MSNBC or CNN, go to the airport, just sit there and watch CNN for free.
Yeah.
You can do that if you don't have a TV or a subscription service. But there are far more outlets for you to watch left-leaning opinion, which is basically the entire mainstream corporate-owned media.
Yeah.
And why should you think that it makes sense in this burgeoning field that is outside the mainstream? Why would you want to let Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter and the Google folks, decide they're going to cut off access to anything that isn't resistance media?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So this is actually, the final link here is a great story. And it just happened, I didn't know about the story when I was organizing the slides. But this person is very smart. I'll slaughter his name, Bruce Bielowski, I guess, or something like that. But I've seen his opinions before, and he's absolutely right. It's not as if America needs adversaries and enemies. But when you're by far and away the wealthiest nation on earth economically and producing the biggest output in the world, you better be aware of threats. You better be doing scenario planning. Who's your friend? Who's your rising enemy? Right. And all this distraction of pitting the United States against Russia, while we let China do what China has been doing. And I think China has built the largest economic bubble in world history, and it's already blowing up, and I'm going to show you the numbers. I've been having this discussion with a number of people, including my brother, who's very sophisticated and had not, however, looked, one of my brothers, who's very into finance, had not looked, in my view, carefully enough at the data on Russia, the data on America, the data on China. We're going to show that to you and show you why this data says we ought to be really worried about China, and Russia actually ought to be really worried about China. So if we go into the
Well, it's funny, Charles. I wonder if this guy writing this piece was listening to the last episode with Larry Nichols, because that's exactly what Larry said on Tuesday of last week, that China's the real problem.
So if we go to the next page, we'll get a little. So this, I know these are numbers, and some of you are probably freaking out, not the numbers, but what we try to do to make it very simple, when you see a green number, that's good, okay?
Green means go.
All right, red is bad. So what we're doing is we're comparing key information, China and the United States first, right? And when you look at the comparison on the right-hand column, you'll see one green number for China, okay? Everything else is bad. And let me tell you why I think everything else is bad. And by the way, shout out to John Batchelor and Gordon Chang. They were kind enough to have me preview a little bit of this on the Great John Batchelor Show, which you have not, if you've not ever listened to that. John has been on the air for 17 years, WABC, typically at 9 p.m. It's right there.
It's not letting me reduce the size of this.
It works like that. For me, anyway. If we could, can we stay like that?
It's staying.
Okay. So
I have no choice in the matter.
All right. So I commend the John Batchelor Show and Gordon Chang's work as well to you. Gordon is one of the world's, if not the world's, leading expert on China. He's been correctly warning about the dangers of the Chinese path towards economic growth and attempted geopolitical domination. People are finally listening to him. He's also an expert on North Korea. He's very frequently on all sorts of media. So simple numbers, right? There are 1.4 billion Chinese people, okay? And there are 325 million of us, okay? Those are not, you go into a casino and you've got $325 and you're betting against somebody who's got $1,400 and the odds are the odds. You know, you're not gonna like those odds, right? So it'd be one thing if the Chinese population, I'm just looking at this from an economic and geopolitical standpoint, nothing about culture, nothing about, you know, I don't know the long history of China. I'm sure there's magical periods. We have a lot to learn from all that. I'm narrowly focused on, it's 2018, July 29th. You know, what should we be worried about and how should we think about the pros and cons of China and the United States from an economic and geopolitical standpoint? So 1.4 billion of them, 325 million of us. The average age of each country is about the same. And that's important. In many African countries, the average age is like 19, 20. In Italy, it's up at like 43, 45.
Wow.
And once you start getting up to this average age level where we in China are, it's not good.
Why
we
is
need
that?
to have more people, because the mixture of people aged 25 to 54, who are the people who are out there, you know, kicking.
Labor force is too old.
It's not even that it's old, it's that we don't have enough in the vital age 25 to 54. People are starting their careers, are optimistic and hopeful, except for those that just got out of one of these crazy academic institutions that's run by snowflakes or in scruffies. But in general, if you take that filter off, those shackles of scruffydom off some of these 25 to 54, they're the people who are trying to get with a partner, think about having a family, building a house, expanding a house, starting a business.
Building the future of the country.
Right, and past 54, you know, you're not so much doing that. And before 25, you know, you shouldn't be spending much time at all on the future of this country because you got a lot to learn, in my opinion. But anyway, so you look at this and you say,
could run Democrat.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah. The growth rate in population. Now we think about business, right? If the population of a country is only growing at 0.41% per year, in the case of China, why should you assume that the internal demand for stuff in China is going to grow markedly faster than that? Right? If the population is only growing at 0.41%, some things will grow faster, but on average, across the whole economy, it's not going to grow that quickly.
Right.
Got to get population growth up, I would think. Here's a really interesting thing. The urbanized population in China, only 59% of the population is in cities. In the United States, it's 82%. And why is that important? If you're trying to get products and services into the mass of a population, if you can only get to 59% through cities, it's a lot tougher to get your stuff out into the rural areas. So there's a logistical problem in China. There's also an infrastructure requirement on spending in China that has not been spent yet. Whereas we need to improve our infrastructure, but we have roads everywhere.
Yeah.
We have more airports than any other nation. We've got, a lot has been invested that has not yet been invested in China, right? So then people will say to me, well, but China, it's the economy of the future. That's great. I heard that story about Brazil in 1980. Brazil was the country of the future, and people have been saying it always will be. But in the case of China, if you look at this consumption, that's the total amount of money spent by the entire population in 2016 on goods and services inside China. 4.4 trillion in 2016. In 2009, how much money did that idiot Immelt, alongside, I'll be kind to Barack Obama, the two of them in the stimulus, how much did they spend? Almost $1 trillion.
Wow.
Okay? And all of China, the whole population, 7 years later, only spent $4.4 trillion. Yeah, we're burning $1 trillion on some stupid stimulus program that didn't work. This gives you a sense of the relative scale. We're roughly, call it a quarter the size of population, but our spending is almost, it's not quite 3 times the spending with a quarter of the people. Right?
Wow.
So our market, our internal market, is a lot bigger.
Right.
Then you look at, this is a statistic that, if you think about it for a second, it makes a lot of sense. The top 10% in an economy, in terms of wealth, or income rather, they spend a disproportionately high percentage of total consumption. Okay, there are finer points to this, but roughly speaking, the top 10% spend more. In the developing world, the middle developing world, not the poorest of the poor, the middle ones, that number can be like 40%, 45% even in some cases. So China and the US are roughly the same. Their top 10%, 31.4, our top 10, 30. So China, in a sense, is more unequal. Everyone loves inequality arguments. It's more unequal, that's why they get a red 1.4. So then you look at the top 10% consumption. How much do the top 10% in China spend on everything? 1.4 trillion.
Wow.
We spend 3.9 trillion. Okay?
So, but that's also a much larger, 10% is going to be more individuals.
Right, so the average spending of the richest in China is only $10,000 a year.
What?
Yeah, whereas we're spending $119,000 a year. So you think about that and you say, all right, I've got a business that wants to sell a product for $2,500 each. Let's just pick a number, Yeah. Why would I waste any time trying to sell such a product in China? Certainly a car, why would I do that?
Like a laptop or something?
Well, the real reason you're doing anything in China is you're investing in China as General Motors and other places so that you can, in Korea and other places, so you can manufacture cars for re-export into the US market. You're not doing it to try to reach Chinese people. Their average spend, this is the top 10%, is only $9,900 a year.
Well, what's the performance of companies like, I don't know, Apple Computer or General Motors over there in China?
They don't break out. They don't have to provide the information.
They don't tell us.
You don't know. So you don't. The answer is General Motors' performance is horrible.
There's not that many people own cars, or what?
No, it's automotive business with legacy unions and legacy pension problems.
Can't compete in China.
Can't compete anywhere. I mean, it's cars. Nobody buys cars, first of all. People buy SUVs if they buy anything. And buy, lease, same difference. But more or less. But people, the market in America is not for cars. It's for sport utility vehicles. But this is just, I'm trying to do headline kind of stuff. You look at this and you say, all right, on the one hand, here we are in Manhattan. There are a lot of rich people in Manhattan. There's a lot of interest in buying stuff. Even so, stores are closing right and left.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
Retail is
across the street from you, kitty corner on 23rd.
I mean, basically everything is out of business. Radio Shack is becoming Taco Bell.
And then kitty corner just shut down. Whatever it used to be, it's gone too.
Staples went out of business on 7th Avenue. I was pretty surprised by that. But yeah, I think the only businesses that are really thriving in Manhattan right now are food and stuff where you physically have to be there to get it.
Right, but so what I'm saying is just on the complexity challenge, if you're sitting here and here we are in America, and we've got this gigantic consumer market, $12.9 trillion a year, right? Why do you say to yourself, well, I haven't yet built my American market position, why don't I go off to China and try to sell the same thing I might sell in the United States in China, when, to do that each time you get on a plane and you go to China, forget the expense, the jet lag, time away from home base, the complexity and all that kind of stuff. I think what we're going to be seeing here soon is, a return to sanity when people begin to say, there's a lot of, as you say, there's stores, there's space that's opening up. It's possible to reconfigure businesses that were basically primarily using human labor with using fewer workers. So you're bringing businesses that used to be outside this country back into the United States. You're not getting the same benefit of bringing all the workers that you laid off before you left, but you are getting incremental workers here. And those businesses will create demand for products that go into those businesses and stimulate activity. So, but look at the difference here. You've got, our top 10% are spending roughly $10,000 a month. It's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
In China, they're spending less than $1,000 a month. These are the top.
Oh.
Then you go to the bottom here, okay? The bottom, 90% in China are spending $200 a month. And that's a lot of Chinese people, right? And whereas our bottom are spending $30,000 a year. This is the bottom 90% of this country. So both at the top end and at the bottom end, our consumers are a lot more affluent. You could talk, and this strips the core of the economy and shows you the core of an economy. What people buy is the market, right? If you then have the ability as a government, as this country, to borrow and to tax, you can use that ability to concoct investment projects and other projects and hire workers, but ultimately the ability to service that government debt, to pay down that debt, is a function of this market, consumption. Government is a derivative, and this is not the way Barack Obama thinks. You can remember when he was selling the stimulus, he was going around the country saying, "You didn't build that," to all the entrepreneurs.
That was so stupid.
Well, his argument is that, I think, to put it charitably, which on Sunday I'll try to be charitable, was that a business wouldn't exist if the government weren't there to keep the country safe. Let's just say they might be thinking something like that.
More like the government wouldn't be there if the people didn't have businesses and incomes to generate taxes and pay for it.
Right.
That's how you're supposed to be thinking as the President of the United States.
Right, but if you've never taken economics that wasn't taught with Marxism, then you wouldn't know that. But so you look at this and you say, all right, we're by far and away the biggest market in the world right now. Now, many things could go wrong. I hope they don't. But for the moment, we are by far, we're the game that you want to play in, not China.
Right.
And we have spent, in this 10-year period, 2007, 2016, individuals and corporations and investment firms have spent $31.5 trillion inside this economy. Okay? That's a lot of money. $31.5 trillion. It's right here. Dollars.
Yeah.
Okay? In contrast, China has spent $34.2 trillion. They've spent more than we have. And it's not to service their internal market. They spent this money
to export.
And they're hoping to dominate certain world industries. Okay, we should not be happy with this approach.
What industries is China trying to dominate?
You name it.
Drones, aerial drones.
You name it. I mean, they're taking an approach.
Cell phone manufacturing.
Well, we saw the same thing coming out of Japan in the 80s. That what you do is build your plants at home to service the international market, and lose money in the beginning so that your competition goes away. And then once you control the market, get all the money back, raising them. That's anti-competitive behavior. And you can see that. You can see it, it's easy to see in these statistics, which, by the way, this is the UNCTAD stat. Don't pull it up, but this is where you would get these statistics in detail. Here's the report on the Chinese government from the CIA, and here's the report on the U.S. government from the CIA. This is all publicly available data.
Report from the CIA on the U.S. government is going to be written by Mr. Brennan.
I don't think he knows how to write.
Well, what is going on with this?
I don't know. Anyway, we can pull that one up at our leisure. Now let's do a comparison with Russia. We got that on the next page. Yeah. All right. Now here, before we get into the table, we just stop it there for a second. It's a wonderful person in Russia. There are many wonderful people. Katerina Blainova. Don't do it now, but if you hit this link, you'll see. I think she said that she's interviewed me, I think, 50 times on a range of topics. It's all at that link. We've been taking these issues about US, Russia, international relations, those issues, and she'll ask me a series of questions. I'll answer them by email, and then she puts these stories together. So we now go into the charts, the chart itself here. How can I do this? I say that China gets a red number. All of Russia's numbers are red, okay, on the right. Now, how can I say that the fact that China is so much bigger than the United States is a red, and because Russia is so much smaller, it's also a red? In the case of Russia, our market, our rich market, we buy $12.9 billion worth of stuff every year, right? And Russia only buys $660 billion.
Wow.
Okay? So again, this is not a comment on cultural issues, or it's cold, clinical, economic, geopolitical reality. Their population is small. It's considerably smaller than ours. The median age is higher. It's not growing. The population is shrinking.
Wow.
Okay? So they've got a major league demographic problem that I don't understand, frankly. I mean, I've only been near Russia, inside Russia on a snowmobile once. Yeah. Been to Ukraine a bunch of times, but Ukraine has the same problem, set of problems. I don't understand, in the case of Russia, it's a vast country with so much water, resources, that could be monetized for the benefit of the population. I don't understand why a population would choose not to grow. I mean, there's so many, I believe there are quite a few attractive Russian women. Why wouldn't they want to have children and families? I don't get it.
When I've traveled around and go to places like China, it's very obvious that I stand out, Caucasian and all that. But when I went to Ukraine, people would walk up to me and start speaking Russian to me because I pretty much look like everybody who's there. So the cultural differences aren't quite as obvious. But I said to someone, I visited this apartment building that was a wreck. And I said, why doesn't somebody, collect $5 a month from everybody in the building and hire someone to service the building? The issue was that after Perestroika, the government agency that maintained this building stopped doing that. And when I suggested that a tenant in the building start a business like that to maintain it, the response was, oh, you're thinking like an American. People around here don't think like that. So there is a substantial cultural difference as far as ever since I was a kid, I would, start a business selling comic books or whatever. They don't have that entrepreneurial spirit in their, roots the way we do here in the United States.
Well, but they have so much by way of resource, so much opportunity. And it's continuing down the trend, the issue here. Like China, they're more urbanized than China is. China, remember, was 59%. These guys are set three-quarters, basically. But not as urbanized as we are. A lot less consumption internally. The top 10%, top 10% in Russia, it's more unequal than we are, right?
Wow. Well, that's like oligarchs there.
But look how much they're spending in total, $212 billion a year versus our team is spending $3.9 billion. We're spending $118,000, $10,000 a month. Their top people are spending slightly more than like $1,200 a month. Okay, so it's not at this moment. There are products you might want to sell in Russia, but there's much more interesting to think about products in the United States, in my opinion. Right. Then you look at the bottom half, again, better than China. The bottom 90% are spending roughly $300 a month. Okay, so how are you going to get, these people can't, with all due respect, maybe they should be a Patreon subscriber.
Exactly.
But that's a meaningful chunk of $300 a month.
Yeah, well, they could watch for free on vk.com.
There you go. But so then remember the investment. We spent $31.5 trillion in this 10-year period. Now we're going to show you the actual numbers. $3.4 trillion only has been invested in.
There we go. I just solved the problem.
You did. Okay, good. So if we can go to the next page, this is. And I promise it's not all numbers, but again,
it's all ball bearings these days, Charles.
If we hit this link.
So when you hear about economic sanctions against Russia, it's really no sweat to the United States. It's just putting the pinch on Russia.
Right. Okay, so this is this concept of capacity utilization. So you have, this is an effort by our Federal Reserve Bank, the St. Louis branch, or part of it, to look at how much of the capacity is actually being used in manufacturing. And you look here at 1950, 55, 60, through to 70-ish, right? We're up, you know, going low point 73%, high point, you know, above 90%.
Wow.
Okay. Now, the trick I learned a long time ago, and it's not something I'm good at, is, you know, production and all that kind of stuff. But the issue is with this figure that it's highly subjective. Guessing what the capacity is of a country, right? Even with a factory, you can have a factory set up a certain way, and with a small investment, you can change, you know, the ability of the factory to produce a lot more. So this is using it, U.S. government statistics, and this is showing that inside the U.S., our capacity utilization rate has been going down and down and down, and by 2000, you know, early part of Obama's period, what was it in manufacturing?
The lowest in history.
It was 64%, right?
Huh.
And it's only climbed up to 75%, meaning that we have a lot of extra capacity. Why did we spend $31.4 trillion inside the United States when we have so much excess capacity? And if we are the largest consumption market in the world, you know, why wouldn't, if you're going to invest in anything to serve the American market, why would you put up a factory in China to export to the United States? Come to America.
Yeah.
We will let foreign companies invest, as we are doing. Alibaba, I think, is just investing a lot larger, or was it Alibaba or Foxconn or somebody?
Yeah,
investing.
Foxconn. Alibaba doesn't manufacture, I don't
But
think.
Foxconn is just putting a gigantic complex into Milwaukee.
Right.
You know, so long as you respect our laws, play by our rules, you know, America.
Or give money to the Clinton Foundation as an alternative.
No, that wouldn't be such a great idea. Not at the moment. But anyway, you look at this and you say the arguments for investing $34 trillion in China in the last 10 years, you know, really don't make that much sense.
Why is this capacity utilization going down?
Well, because we foolishly made decisions, our corporations made decisions to leave this country. We you know, when you just leave without taking down the previous plant, it's not clear that, you know, you shut the plant down, but it's still there. It could be brought back to life. So it's unclear how they measure all this, but
Yeah.
it was, the point being, it may not seem clear, but to me it seems like a clear chart. Manufacturing capacity utilization is going like that. We're spent in this recent period, 2007 to 2016, we spent 31.4 trillion, you know, inside this country, and capacity utilization, we still got a lot of extra capacity. In this, you know, you can't go up, you shouldn't go up to 100%. That is to say, use all your capacity all the time. So the true limit is probably in low 90s. We're at 75. We've got a lot of room left. In particular, when you think about, you know, changing the way you manufacture things using 3D printing and other ways, you may not need to use the same amount of space.
Well, or even changing the technology of the thing that you're manufacturing might make it easier to manufacture.
Yeah. So, all right, so that's the headline. Now, we look here, let's start in 2007. That's the peak of the bubble, the US bubble. China invested 1.4 trillion, we 3.2 trillion, Russia 272 billion, and in the whole world, only 14 trillion. So it's not like every year, you know, I love when the politicians start talking about investing. We want to invest this, invest that. And they're not talking about going to a casino. They're not talking about going to the stock market. They're trying to liken what politicians do with this. The total amount of money, in quotes, invested in productive, in theory, productive projects, where people fight about, you know, in the private sector, they don't just say, I walk into you and I say, Jason, you know, I want to put up a new Google, you know, a new YouTube,
Yeah.
and you've got, you know, an extra $2 billion. Just give me $2 billion.
Sure,
Yeah, come
Charles.
on, you don't need that $2 billion.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the way the politicians think. You know, it's like, we're going to design these programs to invest. You know, no justification, no rate of return analysis, nothing. They just say, our children need more. Can we please have 15 trillion for or $15 billion for some program for children? And then somebody said, well, you haven't shown me anything. He's anti-children. He wants to kill the children. Now, these are projects where people have been fighting around the world and across our entire planet. We're only spending 18 trillion roughly. We're locked into around 18 trillion from 2012 forward. Roughly 18, 19 trillion dollars a year. That's all the projects we can come up with. We don't need some nitwit Alexander AOC saying, let's invest another trillion in healthcare, a trillion over here. That's serious money.
Yeah.
If to do anything now, what we should be doing in this country, if we had a spare $1 trillion, we should be paying down our debt, which is way up at like $20 trillion. Let's think about that for a second, right?
Yeah.
Our national debt at $21 trillion now is bigger than the total amount of capital that everyone in the world has invested on average in the last 4 or 5 years.
It just sounds impossible, like the whole thing is just a giant trick.
Well,
where do they get all these trillions?
Well, you see, that's another thing we don't get. I mean, you've traveled a lot around the world. I have too. You just were in New Zealand, right? I mean, it's a long way away. You go to these other countries, and it's only when you travel to some countries that are not doing well that you come back to America and you say, even the worst parts of America are a lot better than the interior of, Papua New Guinea or something like that. I mean, it's just, we've got a lot going right, and because of that, investors around the world, remember I said there's a lot more wealth than there is output. So nobody knows exactly how much wealth there is at any moment, but the guesses are 250 trillion, 250 trillion, something like that. World output, 75 trillion, 80 trillion, something like that. So when there's that much wealth looking for a home, you look around the world and you say, do I want to put it in England right now? Germany? China? So, the wealthy people, by default, bring their money here.
Right.
And we get used to that. And we let these AOC type politicians and
What
Hillary,
is an AOC?
Alexandria Ocasio, whatever that young 28-year-old.
Oh.
I don't want to mess up her name, so I just call her AOC. And HRC, I'll mess her name up. I mean, these type of people, and Barack Obama with these grandiose schemes, no experience in investing, can take the government debt under Obama from 10 trillion to 20 trillion in 8 years.
Well
That's
done.
a lot of money.
Yeah. Stupid as hell.
So, again, I commend to our viewership, if you want to get behind these numbers, go to this link. There's a lot of information at this. This is actually a UN agency that does pretty good work. It's a little delayed, but it's good. And so China is responsible for 20% of all the money invested. We're 18, and Russia's only 2. But nonetheless, that's 3 countries accounted for 40% of the total amount of money invested. 2 countries accounted for 38% of the total amount of money invested in the world. So I put this up here. People need to understand we're not one big happy family of nations, 200 nations, everyone's more or less the same. No, there's a few big games in town. The biggest of all is the United States in terms of money. Biggest market, most wealth, biggest annual output. So if you want to be in business, you've got to be in the US market. And Donald Trump gets that. And I think Germany gets it now.
They're getting it.
They are definitely getting it. So if we keep on rolling to the next slide. All right. Now this is, I suppose I'm allowed to do this on my own show. This is shameless self-promotion. I've said this in the past that I did a 10-point plan. And don't do it now, Jason, but the links to each of these points, these were all published in the Washington Times in 2014. They're right there for you. But the essence of my plan was to have a strong dollar. So we're already there. I put it in green. To have a fortress Federal Reserve Bank. In other words, a central bank with an immaculate, gigantic balance sheet. We don't have that.
But most people hate the central bank.
You need a central bank in this market. With $250 trillion in wealth washing around the world at these interconnected capital markets, we need a central bank.
But isn't it controlled by evil?
No, I don't think so. Actually, my friend is chairman of it, but.
Oh.
But
the viewing numbers, Charlie.
no, he's a very good guy, Jay Powell.
We'll talk about that another
No, he's
time.
a really good guy. Anyway, we need to have strict and fair financial regulations. We do not have that. We have
agree with that.
We have a regime where cronies still today get away with murder,
Wow.
where they announce these settlements, and they sound like they're big numbers, $1.5 billion here, whatever, but big banks, big investment firms, big cheaters, and I'm not saying all of them are cheaters, but the big cheaters in the world have not been brought to justice yet.
HSBC.
And then they need to be brought to justice. And we need to have a regulatory regime that is big enough and serious enough, and their incentives are strong enough to get these, to give investors the confidence that the United States is a place where cheaters, fraudsters like the Clintons and others, and frankly the Obamas, will be brought to justice, even if, and perhaps especially because they once were the most powerful people on the planet. We don't have that yet. We do have simple and reduced tax rates. We don't have a sovereign wealth fund. I think that's an important thing to do too. When people talk about, as politicians like to do, de Blasio and others, about investing, we don't have a culture where people really understand what investing means. Investing is not speculating. Investing is not going in and saying, let's bet tomorrow whether the market's going to go up or down, which you can do. Investing is sensibly is understanding the risk inherent in anything where you're going to put your money, and then deciding whether you want to take that risk and for what return. That's investing. And to have a culture where we're never going to be in a place where the bottom, let's say 40% of this country, is going to have any meaningful investable funds. You're just not.
I have a question that might shock you in its stupidity. What is a sovereign wealth fund?
So a sovereign wealth fund is where you put a portion, like Norway has one of the biggest in the world, where the government of Norway would hire some smart people and say, we got to make sure our natural gas and energy is going to run out at some point. We've got to make sure that we have money, financial
the
assets.
nation itself has wealth.
Right, and so we'll get a third party, not a government bureaucrat, but somebody who's skilled, Warren Buffett in his prime when he really knew what he was doing. People like that, to think about how our money should be managed for the long run. And there's a big danger. I'm not saying that this should replace what we do in the United States, but I'm saying we should have, in addition to the many billionaires and investment funds that we have, why wouldn't it make sense to have a sovereign wealth fund whose goal was to make money, not,
Isn't it kind of socialist to have?
It's not, I don't think it's particularly socialist. The virtue of doing it is that it would publish reports. You'd begin to have ownership. You might distribute a return to the population each year, so you begin to see. You get a report.
So
Here's
some
how
of your
we're
tax dollars would invest in something that could yield a profit?
Or we might take assets that we have, excess land that we have in the United States that's controlled by the federal government. Maybe you monetize that, put some of the proceeds into a fund.
Yeah, but they'll never do that because people like Harry Reid are monetizing those things and keeping the proceeds for themselves.
Well, that's why I started with, if you have a strong dollar, right, a commitment to keep our currency strong and not debase it, that's something that people who have assets like to hear, a strong dollar, because you don't want to put money into a country where the value of the currency is going to go down and down and down and down.
Well, what do they call that? The printing of money, the quantitative easing?
Yeah, that was just.
That's just reducing
Rubbish.
the value of the dollar, isn't it?
It was just rubbish. We'll be talking about that in a second, actually. How it was a stupid idea at the time. Everybody embraced it because.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Quantitative easing, let's do that.
Yeah, who's not in favor of that?
I'm a little bit uneasy about these quantitative whatevers.
But the reality was, back in 2008-9, when they tried it and they got hooked on it, interest rates were at a certain level. They were 4 or 5% in the U.S., and you could cut them down to 25 basis points, 1% or whatever, and that had an enormous uplifting value on all assets. So people were nervous about the world economy blowing up. We're all in for quantitative easing because it made the value of what they owned a lot more valuable, right? If you have a 5% rate of return business and you've got to borrow at 5%, you're just You know, one hand's washing the other. You're not making much money. If the interest cost goes down to 1% and you're still making 5%, you're a lot better off. So that's in a nutshell what they tried. We don't have a deep enough bench in the United States yet. The people who care about investing, very small percentage. As I said, CNBC audience is very small. So this is one way I think it would make sense to do it if it were done sensibly. And beyond that, it would be, I think, help change the way in which our population thinks about actual investing. I said scrap and replace Obamacare. So this is in 2014 when I wrote this, by the way. It's been scrapped, I think, but not yet replaced. One topic that people are going to have a hard time with, perhaps, is I think, I write in this piece, you got to renegotiate these public union deals. I mean, in the public sector unions, way back when you know everyone
you
was
mean
being
like
abused.
police unions and stuff?
All these teachers, all of these unions, the soft benefits, so the ability to retire with a full pension after 20 years, the health care costs, the other benefits that people get, the right to work when you still are collecting, all these things are so generous and so much better than what you can get in the private sector. It's a gigantic liability. And you know, you can argue that in certain, I'm not saying in all of them, but in certain areas, it really makes sense to renegotiate these deals. You could go so far as to say that why do we need a public sector union? Think about it for a second. I understand why you might want to have a steel union, right? You've got this, you know, steel oligarch person whose mission in life is to replace the employees with machines and, you know, bring the cost of labor down. I could see that tension. But in a public sector union, who are you negotiating with?
The public.
Right. So how can you simultaneously say our public is so evil, you know, that we need to make sure that we overpay a subset of the population because we're all so evil? It's nonsensical. It made sense perhaps 60 years ago or 80 years ago, but today in the private sector there aren't that many unions left.
There was in Hollywood. I was forced to go into the cinematographers union. They screwed me. They never did anything to help me. And in fact, the one time someone outside of the union got a job on a thing and I called the union and I was like, WTF? Nothing.
Yeah, well, all right. You make my point.
I don't like unions.
So 8, I give it a green to, this was back in 2014. We couldn't say that radical Islamist terrorists were an enemy. Now we can, and we've begun to really identify who our true enemies are and work towards defeating most of them, not all of them yet. The step with Iran, I think, is a good set of steps. 9, I was all for secure borders, but not, you know, people say that if you're for secure borders, you're anti-immigration. Rubbish. Many people, my own mother emigrated to this country from Portugal.
You know, the people I find that are most in favor of securing the borders,
The immigrants.
exactly, educated immigrants who are, you know, justice-minded people who came here because they feel like, hey, I had to spend all this money and do all this stuff. Why do people just show up here and get in?
So this is something that I'm not going to quiz you on this, but I'll make it easy for you, Jason. This is something.
Get a D on a Charles Ortell's quiz.
No, but this is something. If we could just move this up a little bit. This is something that we have shown before. A lot of people like to deride Thomas Jefferson and say, "What, you know, he's a slave owner. He was this. He was that. What an idiot." Thomas Jefferson, and remember, Barack Obama said that Hillary Clinton was one of the best secretaries of state in history.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson was the governor of Virginia colony. He was the first secretary, the equivalent of Secretary of State. He was a vice president, I think, for 2 terms. He was president of the United States for 2 terms. And on his tombstone, he asked to be remembered for what?
Being on the $10 bill.
No.
That's Hamilton.
That's exactly. No, he asked, his tombstone apparently reads, Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, author of the Virginia Statute on religious freedom, which predated the Declaration of Independence, and founder of the University of Virginia. I mean, think about that. Here's a guy, all those other things that are so important.
He's like,
I don't want to hear about that.
Never mind that.
So when he was our first minister to France, he was sent a questionnaire, or our government was sent a questionnaire, and he was asked to fill it out. I think it's the only book, full-length book that he ever wrote. And it's called Notes on the Present State of Virginia. The excerpt you can find there. This he wrote in 1782. Now think about this. Our rulers will become corrupt, our people careless. Now what rulers from 2009 to 2016 seem pretty corrupt to me?
Careless as well.
And careless. A single zealot may commence persecutor. Robert Mueller, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, and better men be his victims. They will be forgotten. That is to say, the ordinary men and women in this country. Remember, Sean Hannity and Donald Trump, the forgotten men and women. They will be forgotten and their rights disregarded. They will forget themselves, but in the sole faculty of making money. And they will never think of uniting to effect a due respect for their rights. This is written in 1782, describing what's going on right now in this country. And then it says, our rights shall revive or expire in a convulsion. That's exactly, I would argue that Thomas Jefferson predicted Donald Trump and this movement here. Because the convulsion that's going on in this country, it's not simply, the Trumpistas, or whatever you want to call them. It's also the Sanders people. It's also the independent voters who look at this system as it was, in quotes, working under Clinton, under Bush's, under Obama, and said, this is working for the cronies. It's not working for us.
Right.
Jefferson saw this. Jefferson was, an unbelievably smart individual. And remember that this man never had the benefit of, I don't think he ever had indoor plumbing,
Google.
Or certainly not electricity.
Right.
And let alone Google. And in the volume of his writings, what he read, he spoke, I don't know how many different languages. Really smart guy.
No Google, he had to rely on Alta Vista. Charles, Tomcat in New Jersey rightly points out that Thomas Jefferson is on the $2 bill. Something I
should. Is he really?
I think yes. It's a Tomcat, New
Jersey. I thought Bill Clinton was on the $2 bill.
He's on the $3 bill. So, next page.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So, we always like to talk about the Clinton Foundation. Now, we have up there, Hello, Folly.
Yes.
And when we're thinking about using, having a wind up on Hello, Dolly, I went and I said, well, let me refresh my recollection on, the lyrics in the musical. So here's one of the top songs of that musical. I put my hand in there. And I've always been a woman who arranges things for the pleasure and the profit it derives. That's Hillary. Right?
The title is more appropriate for Bill.
My aplomb at cosmetic art turned a frump to a Trump lady fair.
No way.
Right there, it's in red.
Wow.
So it's pretty funny. I haven't heard the song itself, but I found the lyrics amusing. So here's some new revelations that the crowd, I hope you're going to love this, okay? We have found more Clinton Foundation, more fraudulent Clinton foundations.
It's amazing.
More than we've already told you about, right? We begin this story, if we could go here, the FBI warns about charity frauds. If we hit that link. What?
What does it say?
Do we hit the right link?
I guess it's something wrong with the link, huh?
Could be my fault.
Let's try it another way. It's also sometimes what happens when it goes from Microsoft Word to
yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, this is something that came out on July. We can go back to the slide. I'm sorry the link didn't work, but it's a notice on the 8th of July, 2008, specifically warning about charity frauds. Like, it says things like, make sure the charity actually exists, don't send cash, check the paperwork of the charity, things that you really need to do with the Clinton Foundation. All right, let's try the second link. This is the Clinton for President Committee that was formed on the 3rd of October, 1991 as, guess what, Jason?
The William J. Clinton.
No, it's called the Clinton for President Committee, and it was formed in Arkansas as a not-for-profit corporation. Here we have it. All right? Clinton for President Committee, a non-profit corporation, formed by this guy, David Watkins, and his name is familiar to me. We're going to have to study who he is exactly.
David Watkins.
Perhaps Larry Nichols will know about this. It was filed on October 3rd, 1991, and this thing still exists.
Huh.
It's in good standing in 2018. Why is the Clinton for President Committee still in existence? Okay? Why did they set up I can understand why you would do it in the run-up to his being president, but why is it still in existence? Could it be that this is a way in which people have been funneling money to the Clintons, sending it to this not-for-profit, which in theory is still in good standing, and like these LLCs that the Clintons have, they set up for their personal stuff where money goes in the exact same, there we go. FBI tips on avoiding charity fraud. He's a magician. Do not respond to unsolicited spam email, which is, I think, a problem they had on the private server.
Well, John Podesta seems to have that problem.
Right. So this is coming out July 8th, 2008. Now, think about the irony of this, right? This is precisely when the Clinton Foundation is blowing up, and they know about it. Mm-hmm. Internal people. In July of 2008, Ira Magaziner and Anil Soni, the head of this chai that legally didn't exist, went into the board of the Clinton Foundation and said, you know what? We blew through $23 million. We diverted $23 million. This is in July of 2008. Hillary and Bill have basically accepted that Barack Obama is going to be the president. Can't let that scandal blow up. So how do we cover it up? Well, we got money sitting over here. We'll just we'll cover up that diversion by diverting money from somebody else.
Unbelievable.
So just when this fraud warning is going out from the FBI, the Clintons are escalating their fraud. And I would argue the Obama people were complicit. They knew at this time there was a problem, and they just couldn't have this blow up prior to the November 2008 election, because then the Republicans, dingy John McCain, would have won.
It's telling you to validate the legitimacy of an organization by directly accessing the recognized charity or aid organization's website.
Yeah, and this is Robert Mueller, head of the FBI at this point. They must be laughing their asses off. They investigated the Clinton Foundation for 4 years, from 2001 to 2005, didn't see the obvious fraud, and yet put this kind of a thing out, even as the Clinton Foundation is blowing up. And everybody should have known it. Lois Lerner should have known this.
It also tells you to verify the legitimacy of nonprofit status of the organization by using various internet-based resources. Now, I did that for a 501c3, and it resulted in me getting sued for defamation when I found out that they weren't properly registered. So you do need to be careful following the advice of the FBI. I don't think people should not do that.
Right.
But,
so good for you to get this back. So there's this thing still exists, the Clinton for President Committee. Then there's yet another foundation we found, the Clinton-Gore Presidential Transition Planning Foundation.
Whoa.
This thing started on August 11th, 1992. Let's see if we could hit that. Yeah, okay. This is, it's dissolved subsequently, right?
Mostly due to global warming.
And it's, I think, formed in the, John Hart, I'm not sure who he is, but he was working in the Bank of America Tower, 200 West Capitol Avenue. And John Hart formed this thing August 11th, 1992, before the election. And then he went into the Clinton team to work with who? With Hillary Clinton and Ira Magazine on the healthcare disaster mess, where they were meeting in secret, consulting with potential donors. And here's this Clinton-Gore Presidential Transition Planning Foundation that ultimately was dissolved. But they started with this. I think it morphed into the inaugural committee, the first one, and then the second one.
That's interesting. 1992, that morphing was very popular. Terminator 2 was the first to utilize it, but then they were using morphing throughout all kinds of things.
So here's another domestic nonprofit corporation set up before the Clinton Foundation. Then here are this DC laws. This is interesting if you hit that link. The one above it, yeah.
Well,
you got it.
Just lost something. Sorry. I think I was distracted by, no, I was distracted by something over, we lost the wide shot of you for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, it's fine.
Okay.
Keep going.
So these are whenever you're operating a foundation, a not-for-profit corporation, you've got to make sure that you check all the laws. In the case of these presidential inaugural ceremonies and committees, you have Washington D.C. law, you have federal law, a raft of federal laws, tax and other statutory laws. Here they are for you. Okay, this explains that when you set up a presidential inaugural ceremony, it can only last for a short period of time. There are other laws that say the Presidential Inaugural Committee is a nonprofit corporation, and it needs to disband, file reports and disband within, I think, 90 or 180 days. Okay, so here's some additional rules for people who have not necessarily gotten close enough to this mess to understand. If we go back into the slides, the records for the 1997 presidential inaugural are missing. Okay, I've tried to get
It's
them.
like that book.
Yeah.
The president's records are missing.
Exactly. Most recent presidents' records are missing.
Where is that book?
So
there, it's right there.
Which one?
Underneath Larry's book.
Oh, yeah. This one?
That's the one. The president's records are missing.
Right. So here, if you look at, Jason, if we can hit the LA Times piece, that's under next, yeah. Yeah. There we go. All right. They spent $44 million. They're able to say by January 21st, 1997, the day after, $31 million in private contributions and government spending of 12.7. So $44 million in total. They know this on January 21st, 1997. But the full records of this Presidential Inaugural Committee that gave, I believe, $2.3 million to the Clinton Foundation in 1998. Query, why did it not give it in 97? But this inaugural committee that was chaired by one Clinton Foundation trustee, Vernon Jordan's wife, Ann Jordan, and at the time he wasn't a Clinton Foundation trustee, but he later became the longest serving trustee, Terry McAuliffe.
Oh, yeah.
How did they raise $31 million? Where's the report on this, FBI, you're listing? Where is the damn report on the 97 inaugural? And where are the records, the precise records of how much money was raised, how much money was spent, to what vendors, and who had custody and control over the residual of this presidential inaugural from April 11th, 1997 until sometime in 1998, when in theory the Clinton Foundation received $2.3 million. I mean, I tried. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request. I was denied. You know, maybe some people working in the FBI, they can get it.
Huh.
So if we go back in, Jason, this is a great one. Then we have this thing formed the 25th of June, 1998, the Clinton Legal Expense Trust, okay?
Right.
Now,
so this is 1998, he's defending lawsuits.
Yeah. Now they form it, I cannot explain this. They form it in Oklahoma, of all places. They have a branch in Washington, D.C. It's now inactive. It's been
Somebody's going to know why they chose Oklahoma.
Well, probably there's no law there, as a guess.
Right.
There's no jurisdiction. But the amazing thing is we have managed, a team of us has managed to discover documentary evidence that they did this same sort of thing. They went to neighboring Maryland, and in neighboring Maryland, they told people, you know what, we're a charity, we're not for profit. This is a charity designed to raise money to pay off Bill and Hillary Clinton's legal bills. That is not a charity.
Why is that a charity?
It's not a charity.
Yeah.
Absolutely not a charity. And so somehow they managed to bamboozle people into saying it's a charity. In Maryland, what they go so far as to fill in a registration, get the equivalent of a Social Security number, it's called an FEIN, assigned to this thing on the basis that it's a charity. And they tell Maryland, they send across state lines, they say, hey, we're a charity, and they fill out the return, the federal tax return, as if it were a charity. We have the amount that they claim that they spent. They claim they spent $2.3 million on charitable stuff. We don't know. It's a guess, paying off the lawyers. But in that year, in 1998, in the main Clinton Foundation, they had no money spent on charitable purposes at all. And they get away with this. They filed this thing in Maryland, in Oklahoma, I'm sounding like Howard Scream Dean, Washington, D.C., in North Carolina, in New Jersey, and we're going to go state by state by state to see how many different times did they send across state boundaries, using most likely the mail or the facsimile or the phone or electronic. You know, how many different times did they send false and materially misleading documents across state lines using the mail, you know, and collecting millions and millions of dollars for the purposes of what? Paying off lawyers. And
for crimes they actually did.
yeah, well, but the point is, you're sitting here, you're the President of the United States, you're trying to be a senator, you've run up, by their account, $14 million in legal bills. Now, most people...
That's crazy.
I mean, to get into a place where you're running up $14 million in legal bills, you got to be doing some seriously bad stuff.
A lot of raping.
And well, this was less of the raping and a lot more of the corruption. And so the point here is, though, why did the two law firms involved, I think the principal ones were Skadden Arps and Williams and Connolly, why did they allow the Clintons to run these gigantic receivables? Who made that call? And at what point, if you haven't paid your lawyer off in the last 90 days...
Stop talking to you.
Yeah, but we're talking years. And so how far out of the norm was that? And how culpable might the lawyers be, for doing this, seeing the Clintons in trouble, guessing they're going to want to stay in power, thinking that this investment of $14 million will now get us right into the arm, be paid back many-fold if Hillary becomes president, if she becomes a senator, et cetera. So that whole set of analysis needs to be thought through a lot more carefully. Then there's the tax question. When somebody gives you money to pay off your legal bill, okay, that's income to you. And it's not necessarily a deductible expense. When you give, when you get the gift, right, and it, let's say, comes into, let's not use you, a friend gets a gift, and now the friend, in theory, takes that gift and pays the legal expense. It's not clear that the legal expense is a deductible expense.
Yeah, why would it be?
It can be, sometimes it can be, but sometimes it's not. So this whole thing stinks to high up. And here we have the entire community of ass clowns in the corporate media who are going on and on and on, Russian collusion, the Trump Foundation, $20 million of his own money primarily, they're going all over the place, and they're ignoring this massive scandal where, Williams and Connolly looked the other way, lent money, I would argue, to the Clintons, should have known all of this was illegal, was centrally involved in it, and to top it all off, got them out of Dodge City trouble by concocting these very expensive book deals for all the Clintons, for Bill, for Hillary, for Chelsea maybe.
The law firm did that?
Yeah, well, there's a top partner at Williams and Connolly, I think, called Bob Barnett, who's very much involved. He's not really so much a lawyer as he is a book agent. And he puts these book deals together, charges a lot of money.
I don't trust the book deals at all. It seems like there's a couple things that have come to my attention. Like, it seems like professional poker players might be having money funneled to them through a fixed poker game, and then they go tweeting nonsense. And why do professional poker players care about what I or true pundits say? And then we've got, stuff like these book deals for James Comey. Like, has there ever been an FBI director who's written a book before?
I don't know.
Barack Obama, $65 million. Has there ever been anyone who's made $65 million from selling a book that wasn't named Harry Potter?
I was going to say, it's a nonfiction book, you might get it, but 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. But then here's yet another one. I found it I think this morning. Look at this last one. Hillary Clinton for president. How many things strike you as being badly wrong? Let's think about this. January 4th, 2008. This is just as the primaries are beginning, right? Daniel Halper's excellent book claims that in the month of January, Hillary Clinton's campaign, by the month of January, had burned $100 million.
Wow.
Okay? So beginning of the month, they set up Hillary Clinton for President, Inc. Where? Well, they registered. I'm not sure where the main office was. Oh, yeah, there it is. D.C. is the main office.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but they register it.
But if it's in Arlington, why isn't that Virginia?
Is there? I don't know. I don't know where. I think
this is weird.
Yeah, this is very weird. I think it's probably Virginia, but they're claiming D.C. So they're lying to Arkansas, but they choose to register in Arkansas, not in Little Rock, but in Hot Springs, Arkansas, on January 4th, 2008. What the hell is that all about? Why would you register this Hillary Clinton for President, Inc. in Hot Springs, Bill's hometown?
Yeah. Because you probably know a lot of the people running stuff over there.
That's right. So this, to me, remember, this is just at the same time that the largest donor of the Clinton Foundation, Unitaid, illegally, and I would argue, commits, the Clinton Foundation illegally solicits hundreds of millions of dollars that are not accounted for starting in 2008, 2007, 2008. So as a guess, They found a friendly banker, a friendly town,
Yeah.
a friendly, and they said, we'll set this thing up, we'll call it a nonprofit corporation. And what we mean by that is you send the money in, whatever goes in comes right back out. It won't show a profit, so there's no income tax involved.
It's like a Roach Motel.
Exactly.
Money goes in, but it never goes out. It goes somewhere else.
It's the opposite of a roach motel.
Right. Money goes in and it goes
And
right
all of
out.
it goes right back out. So, but anyway, this is yet another one. And we haven't yet tied together, though we will, all the various and sundry entities around the Clinton Foundation. Each of these is an entity that should have been disclosed in various Clinton Foundation state and federal filings, because they asked the question, is the Clinton Foundation, our directors, officers, key employees, whatever, connected to any other exempt or non-exempt organization? And of course, here they are. They don't disclose any of this because they can't. If they did disclose this, they wouldn't have been able to keep at the main presidential foundation, keep their tax exemption. So as a guess, what they were doing is doing mailings at the expense of the Clinton Foundation, using low-cost postage, which a real foundation can get, to solicit all this stuff, and they're commingling everything, not doing any of the filings. Any one of these mistakes would be grounds not to get a federal tax exemption. But when you see this going all the way back to 1991, right, you can't say that it's now happenstance, starting in 2001 when they do the International AIDS Trust, the American India Foundation, the tsunami thing, the Katrina thing, and on and on and on and on and on. This is just the gang that cannot obey charity laws at all. And their business model is very simple. It's exactly what Bill Clinton was impeached for. You lie under oath, you obstruct justice, you divert dark pools of millions and billions of dollars. And how many other people are going to follow this model, Barack Obama?
He's already
Don't
doing
think
it.
you are.
No, he's geared up to. He's in the on deck circle right now.
He's in the on deck. I think he's about to get decked. So we'll show you in a second.
You're going to blitz
there's
the.
been an announcement that we'll talk about in a second. All right. This is a very interesting thing. You set this up. You had the forethought, the genius to think about this. And now you're up at 64,000 subscribers, and we've got these various means to all communicate. There's a wonderful person named Katika. I had the fortune to speak to her last week. And what she's doing, if we can hit her Twitter feed, let's hope that works. Up the top. Yeah. Okay, what she's doing, and we go down a little bit, she's going to go through every single state. You see this?
Just want people to know how they can follow her there.
Yeah. Look at these here. She's going through every single state. She's going to do all 50 states, and she's going to figure out in the general election, a green person is a Trump supporter, a neutral person is I forget what it is, unclear yet, and then a red, I think, is no. But she's going through every single congressional district, I hope every senator in the country, to try to figure out, who are people who look like they're not going to be helpful, who are people who deserve support. She's going to do this rigorously. We have the ability, I think, with her work, to contact, using the 64,000 subscribers, if people want to help.
Yeah, it's got their Twitter handles right there.
Yeah, ask all of these people, are you in favor of charity fraud? Because if you're not, you need to shut down the Clinton Foundation. You need to shut down all the Clinton charities, okay? And so I know these are some states here, and I just picked a few of these. We could have an entry for almost any state. We're never going to make short-term progress in a state like California. But if our goal is not necessarily to win in 2018 in California, which is hard, but rather to raise the temperature and the focus on charity fraud involving the Clintons and the Obama charities.
How could anyone be against fighting charity fraud?
Well, if your name is
Well,
Hillary
actually,
Clinton,
I know somebody who's against.
Chelsea,
To somebody. Chelsea,
Bill.
somebody named Robert that I know.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in the California media market, which is, I think, the biggest media market in the world, right?
Gotta be.
Why don't people in the crowd? Why don't we start sending tweets, contacting, calling, and asking? Xavier Becerra, who's all in for fraud, he's the Attorney General, I know.
Yeah.
But, Xavier, we understand why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, you hired the Awan people and covered it up. And then you brought in as your number 2 person somebody who was involved in the House doing that. So you're centrally involved in that. You know, you seem actually, there is some pressure on the Clinton foundations, the various ones of them in California. But if we get the crowd energized, focused on California, and then the press starts to pick up, Thomas Paine and others start to pick up what we're doing and join the party using social media. I say, you guys, I personally am a single issue voter in 2018. Are you going to do something about the Clinton charity frauds or not? Because if you can't prosecute the Clinton charity frauds, you're a worthless human being.
Right.
Right?
Well, either that or you're part of it. Why is it not Javier Becerra?
What did I call him?
Well, everybody calls him Xavier Becerra, but I mean, it seems like Javier. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. He's got an X instead of a J.
So then we just quickly go through it. In Florida, very important races, not just, we have here the senatorial race. Rick Scott's the governor going up against Bill Nelson. Again, you know, Pam Bondi is the Attorney General of Florida. She should care about charity fraud. You know, what are you guys going to do about the Clinton Foundation frauds that are going on in your state? Down in Georgia, Donald Trump has just endorsed Brian Kemp, who is going to challenge a charismatic African-American woman for governor. Kemp is the Secretary of State right now in Georgia. What the hell are you doing, Brian? It's an obvious fraud. You know, none of the filings that are there in Georgia make any sense. Why are you letting this slide?
Swamp.
You know, Indiana, you know, this is Mike Pence's state. We've got a businessman, Mike Braun, endorsed by Trump. You know, what the hell, Mike? Are you in favor of charity fraud? I mean, Mike Pence, the two Mikes, Braun and Pence. I mean, what's going on here? Get serious. In your state, you could do something about it. Shut this Clinton Foundation down. Here in Maryland, this long shot Tony Campbell, Maryland filed as a charity. There's got to be somebody in the crowd from Maryland who can make an issue of this. You know, there are many newspapers, there are many radio shows, etc. Get Tony Campbell to challenge Ben Cardin. Are you all in for charity fraud? Or, you know, if I lose and you are the senator, will you join Republican colleagues in making an issue of the Clinton charity frauds or not? You know, Claire McCaskill, I mean, I don't think she's going to win in Missouri, or as they pronounce it, I guess, Missouri out there. But the Attorney General of that state is running against Claire McCaskill. Now, Mr. Hawley, I mean, why aren't you going to make an issue? Issue number one in your race, what are you going to do about charity fraud if you become a senator? Okay, what are you going to do right now as Attorney General? Why don't you make an issue of it? And here we go, in New Jersey, this is an interesting race. Another businessman is challenging a deeply flawed, and I would argue corrupt, Bob Menendez. Menendez is probably all for charity fraud, right? But this thing filed in New Jersey. There's a link to it.
Wow.
Okay? Now, in Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn is a wonderful human being. I hope she does win.
How's it looking for that?
I think the primary is this week. The Republican primary, I think she'll win that, and then she's going to, I think, beat the Democrat pretty easily.
I wonder if there's some way that we could interview her or somehow help.
I don't know the rules.
Probably too busy.
Yeah. And down in West Virginia happens to be the only state that has booted the Clinton Foundation off the rolls.
Oh, wow.
And not all the states know this. They've been obviously trying to hide it.
Huh.
Mississippi also disciplined them, and then they didn't tell West Virginia, so West Virginia said a long time ago, and they didn't tell all the other states yet that happened in West Virginia.
Massachusetts revoked their...
That's this Chai thing, yeah.
Oh.
But, you know, this is just a few examples, and we're going to beyond this, and we would welcome suggestions. This is an area where people in the crowd can help. Actually roll up your sleeves, start tweeting, saying, how come you're not going to do anything about this? All right? So...
getting too much cash.
That's right. Going forward, I think it's important to understand that I do a lot of stuff on right-leaning programs, but I do, in the last 2 years, I think I've been on more left-leaning, hard left-leaning shows, with particularly with Utrice Lead. You could just hit that one. She's a wonderful human being.
How's Utrice doing?
I think she's doing better, but so, I mean, she comes up with the titles. Did Obama protect the renegade Clinton's massive charity fraud scheme? May 31st, 2018. I don't know how many shows I've done with her. I would guess it's at least 50, could be 100 or more. But so we're about here on this process on Sunday with Charles and closing in. I reject labels. I think labels are not useful. We're trying to find the truth, the crowdsource of truth. We're trying to actually solve vexing problems. I think the largest unprosecuted set of charity frauds in the world is a vexing problem worthy of attention. That's why I've spent 3+ years on it. But now let's get some things done. Work together. Let's reach out to these. You guys can do the work, and ladies can do the work. I'm doing the work. Reach out to these people who are running for office and put them on notice that you do care and that charity fraud is not okay. And you want to see it's an easy thing to do. Force these state attorney generals, some of whom we're trying to reach out to do their goddamn job. And then this is a very great piece. Somebody sent it to me. This is an 80-year-old gentleman who is talking about the 10 most destructive Americans. It just came out. If we just scroll through this quickly, we've got this guy who Deep Throat in Watergate, Bill Ayers, I think he should be higher on the list, Teddy Kennedy, Walter Cronkite, never liked him. There's Bill and Hillary. Chelsea's off the list, but there's
Now,
Bill and
who are
Hillary.
these, the most destructive people?
Yeah, in the last 80 years. Valerie Jarrett, Jimmy Carter, Lyndon
Johnson should be at the top. Wow. Where's
And-
George W? This list
well,
is
that's
a
what
little-
somebody, the Bushes, but that John Kerry's number one. I wouldn't put John Kerry number
I
one.
would put GHWB at number 1 and maybe Johnson number 2. Barack is up there in the top 5 for sure. Jimmy Carter, though?
What happened in Iran, encouraging,
Yeah, but I wonder how much of that was the doing of the CIA and the messing around with the Shah and all that. I think Jimmy Carter, I don't know, I was a kid at the time, but I think he tried to do.
it was bad.
I think
The interesting thing, though, is that most of these people are in this time frame I'm talking about, we've been talking about, 1988 forward.
that list I don't endorse without George H.W.
Well, no,
on it.
that's what the person that sent it to me said the same thing. But it's just, I think it's interesting that this just came out. And then this is really interesting. If we hit this, Donald Trump's endorsement of Ron DeSantis, who was well back in the polls, has made an enormous difference. And I think Ron DeSantis, when you look into his resume, not just because he was, I think, a SEAL, and between graduated from Yale and then Harvard Law School, he did several tours of SEAL duty, and I think he's a decent individual, hardworking. He's now got a 12-point lead against his opponent in the primary.
A lot of SEAL duty in San Francisco, I think.
He didn't do that.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, he was on the front lines.
It's an immature joke, Charles.
Okay. And then this Twitter thing, here's Donald Trump explaining how in the coming week, you want tickets, here's how you get them. There's going to be 2 rallies in the coming week. He's doing one in Tampa with DeSantis. And he's doing one 2 days later in Pennsylvania, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, however you pronounce it. And, I think these rallies, people have made a big mistake on the Democrat side, thinking that it's a good idea to take August off, and these are all about local elections. Donald Trump won't be on the ticket. I think they are completely missing a movement that is growing in force, growing in enthusiasm, and a lot of these rallies apparently are pulling independents, not simply Republicans. They're pulling independents, sometimes even Democrats, who are just curious to get a chance to see what's really going on here. Why the enthusiasm?
Charles, are you aware of this Trump VR video that I made on Crowdsource the Truth some time ago? It's an actual Trump rally in Las Vegas prior to his win, and if you have a VR headset, you can put this thing on, and I'm actually interactively controlling this. You can look in any direction. You can look right at President Trump, and if you have a Samsung virtual reality headset. This thing is stereoscopic 3D, made with a rather unique stereoscopic virtual reality camera that I invented.
That's pretty impressive.
Thanks. Trump VR. Didn't get that many views because
Should put it back up.
back in the day. Well, it's still there in the archives of Crowdsource the Truth. I think virtual reality never really took off in the way that all the sort of Wall Street muckety mucks. You know, I was actually sitting in a meeting at the New York Times when some Wall Street schmuck was up there saying virtual reality is going to be an $80 billion industry, and I said, you know something? I heard this same exact speech 8 years ago about 3D. I got up and left. That was the moment I made the decision that I was going to shift gears and start doing Crowdsource the Truth.
Put that in the book.
Yeah. I got to get somebody to give me a $65 million advance.
So here we have this point that I think this is Cheryl Atkinson made a great point.
She's been tweeting a lot about how they were surveilling her.
Well, this is an actual transmission.
Oh yes,
Okay.
from Stratfor.
Brennan is behind the witch. Yeah. Obama leak investigations, internal use only. Please do not forward. Brennan is behind the witch hunts of investigative journalists learning information from inside the Beltway sources. Note, there is specific tasker from the White House to go after anyone printing materials negative to the Obama agenda. Oh my. Even the FBI is shocked. The Wonder Boys must be in meltdown mode.
Who are the
I mean,
Wonder
this
Boys?
is, I don't know who this is, but I'm telling you, these aren't our values. Whether this is not right to, if this happened under Obama's watch, it's the people who did this is an unforgivable sin. Especially, you know, Brennan, in my mind, Clapper, Yapper, and Comey, and all these guys, I mean, they're on Mueller, they are on thin ice to begin with. But here we have an investigative journalist, award-winning, you met her.
She's great.
Investigative journalist who pumps out fantastic work. And now we're learning just how bad this Brennan guy was and just how over the top he was under Barack Obama's authority. And, you know, this did not happen by accident. And so we need to, you know, encourage the people who are trying to expose the reality to stiffen their spines. We need to show support for those people.
Yeah.
And we need to know what truly happened. And this morning I got this thing on the Senate Intelligence Committee. People have long been telling me that the Senate Intelligence Committee is a sieve. It's not simply the one person, this guy James Wolfe, arrested June 6th for lying to the FBI. This is a very lengthy article. It's too long to go through on the show. But I would encourage people, if you want to read one link only, read this in depth. And it goes into, this guy Wolfe was having an affair with Allie Watkins when she was still in college. Okay? And he's the top guy on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He has that bad judgment. He's feeding information to somebody he's sleeping with. And this gives you the whole timeline.
Well, how about her journalistic integrity of sleeping with the subject?
Well, speak to Mrs. Jack Welch about that one. That's what she did. She was editor of the Harvard Business Review when she did it.
Wow.
But anyway, this is really a lot of good details for those of us who've been following it. I mentioned to you, a good friend sent this Chicago Tribune story to me this morning.
Oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah, so this thing, it looks like an iron on the side, right? You got the trailer park in Little Rock.
It looks like a Star Wars fort to me.
You could put it down like that, you know.
Right.
It's just silly.
So they're delaying the groundbreaking until next year. This is interesting because it was just a couple weeks ago that I was in Chicago talking to people about what they thought about this, and it was mixed feelings, I have to say.
Well, I mean, it's basically, I have nothing, if rich people based in Chicago or anywhere else want to build a monument to Barack Obama and pay for it themselves, go do it. You know, pass the local zoning and do it. But you cannot say that you're doing this for a presidential foundation when the thing was set up illegally for religious purposes. There's no presidential foundation that can have religious purposes. right?
It also goes against the essence of what the president is. He's not supposed to promote religion beyond everybody's free to have freedom of religion.
Well, no, I think the reason they selected religious is that if you argue religious, there's
Taxes,
special.
yeah.
No, you don't have to disclose as much if you're a religion. Congress shall make no law, abridging a religion, etc.
This is why Scientology
Right.
fought so hard to get established as a religion.
So you know, the notion that the Obama Foundation might become a cult or a religion is not a crazy notion, given the way we've watched this whole thing work. So,
Incidentally, that's something that someone we know accused me of doing, creating a cult.
that's right.
And again, you always accuse of what they're doing. So.
But so with this Obama Foundation, it was formed to be a presidential records repository. There's strict rules about that. If you say, go into the IRS, you fill out your application, and you say, like the Clintons do, we have no other relationships with any other foundations, when you're in the business of making illegal nonprofit organizations, that's what you like to do, you can't get federal tax exemption, but they did. And anyway, going forward, this is where I say, you know, J.P. Morgan has said that quantitative easing might in fact have devastating consequences. These were big promoters of quantitative easing back in 2009, and the continuous promoters. Now, because we've been easing so much, you know, easing, what it really means is if you have like the most powerful central banks in the world, the ability to move markets, they're so big, and everyone hears, hey Jason, interest rates are only going down. You know, the euro rate's going to go down, the pound rate's going to go down, the yen rate, the dollar, interest rates are going down.
The pound sand rate is going up.
Exactly. You're able to, all your equity prices are going to go up. You know, it's really sensible to borrow as much money as possible and buy anything because it's going to go up in value.
But I thought quantitative easing was just printing more dollars.
Printing more dollars and also lowering interest rates, and it's a combination of all the above. It's even worse than this. It's quantitative easing, which has to do with lowering interest rates, making it easier to access money and have money circulate with low interest rates, even interest rates that are less than inflation, which is very dangerous. It's that, and also deficit spending. So you're trying tricks. It's like, you know, when your car battery dies, you know, and the car's not going to move, and you sit there and you put your foot on the accelerator, and you're like, how come this car isn't moving? Because you don't have a functioning battery, you nitwit. You know, that's basically what happened in 2009. The world's car battery died, and we now spent, you know, almost 10 years with a foot on an accelerator, and it's not going anywhere. If we could just, sorry, I want to, yeah. So one of the countries, just to finish on this thought, when you encourage borrowing, as happened in quantitative easing, you end up with people who borrowed a ton of money. Some of the countries that are really the most exposed, we're bad, but now if you go to the next link, you'll see the UK is in serious difficulty. We covered this on a previous show. I forget if it was one or two ago. The UK, people in the UK have a tendency to borrow more than we do. They're more comfortable, you know, having big lines of credit and, you know, borrowing against their bonus. Let's say that's going to come next year. They get money today, and they're happy to pay the interest. So they have this long-standing pattern and practice in the UK of individuals borrowing a lot more than normal. So as a consequence of that, and as a consequence of the dependence of that country on the financial industry, which is leveraged, the debt that sits atop the entire country inside the United Kingdom is really, really high. And then you have Brexit as well, the thought that they would leave the European Union. So this is, if you...
When is that going to happen?
Supposedly next year. I think
Takes
March.
so long.
Yeah. So we're almost done. Our friend, our acquaintance Steve Bannon has been in the news. He is going, to the consternation of all elites, and here he is, he's become a scruffy, but he's not the traditional scruffy. He's taking on this horrible human being.
How is he doing that?
Well, Soros has set up a series of, in quote, foundations across the world.
Society.
To try to promote no borders, globalism, unregulated, all of that. And Bannon's going to mount a counterattack, country by country. I don't know how he's gotten the funding together, but I guess he's got it. And he's going to take Soros and these foundations on in places like Sweden, in the UK, in France, etc. And there's a pan-European-wide, in theory, parliament election next year. So he's going to have, this is a major effort of his. And at the very least, it'll be interesting to watch him try to make it happen.
Whenever I hear about something like this, Charles, I start thinking like, did Steve Bannon leave Trump's cabinet to go do this, and maybe they made it look like they were?
I think if it is true that Steve was responsible for that Fire and Fury book by talking to that author, Michael Wolff, that would have seriously upset Donald Trump. And I think also, what else did he do? Oh yeah, in the early days of the Trump presidency, he got himself on the cover of Time magazine, with the notion that he was the real president of the United States. That's the kind of thing that, presidents typically don't like.
Yeah.
So it's possible that he, overplayed his hand. But I've met him several times, and he's been nice to me. And in person, on television and the radio, he's a very smart guy. But in person, he's a genuine patriot, a good man, a good human being. So what I think, if we just finished up this, we got this from our buddy, our mate, Michael Smith. I think I don't know if this must be Georgina Downer, must be Alexander Downer's maybe daughter or niece or whatever, but there's an election recently that she lost. And Downer was, Michael Smith.
Downer.
Michael Smith was explaining, that's funny, make Mayo matter. It's an odd hashtag, but anyway, I think we're going to see, as this disruption continues, as the Trump agenda seems to work on the biggest economy in the world very quickly. I mean, you would think to turn the U.S. economy around would be a gigantic job, and here's a guy making enormous progress despite the kind of resistance that he's had. People are watching this. We're hearing reports in the public that, the Chinese and others are looking at this and saying, Donald Trump is a genius. He obviously knows
Stable
things
genius
that we don't know. So maybe we shouldn't fight this guy. Maybe we should end the trade war. Maybe we should get back in his good graces. And I think winning will beget more winning. Now, there's always the risk that Mueller and the others actually have something that they're going to use against Trump. But with each passing day,
why would they wait?
They're waiting for the election. They're waiting to throw some gigantic mud in October.
Yeah, but that'll be more fake crap, very likely. I mean, if they had something for real, why would they wait to bring it out? They would have.
I've heard in the past that the argument that at this time of year in particular, even though Nixon stepped down in August of 1974, most times in August, people are away from the press, not for the whole month, but typically there's less interest in business and politics. It's more about the family. It's more about vacation. It's more about enjoying the nice weather or hot weather or whatever.
Barbecues, Charles.
Exactly, barbecues. Put another shrimp on the barbie. Yeah. Well, that's the wrong country.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think there is the chance that something very negative could happen, and I hope that doesn't materialize. But if we remain on the trajectory we've been on, particularly in the last little while, think about we've got this guy, Brett Kavanaugh. I think we all should get used to saying the words Justice Kavanaugh, because that's going to happen. I think these tax cuts 2.0, those are going to happen. I think an infrastructure plan is going to come together for early 2019.
Better rebuild LaGuardia Airport.
Not that. I think
Folly.
I haven't been out there recently, but the thing I would say is that there's this capacity we talked about, this unused capacity. It's in the northeast or east of the Mississippi. There's just so many blighted areas that if government would work sensibly, to fix these blighted areas, to take these brownfield plants and other things that tough to knock down, and have a solution so we can get rid of all this stuff, make it a shorter permitting period to get manufacturing plants up and running, encourage people to hire in the private sector, make it a good thing to hire somebody as opposed to, make a decision to hire and you've got to worry about this and that and all these other things so you don't hire.
Right.
So in summary, as we said in the beginning, the accomplishment list, the true accomplishment list of this administration is amazing. And we have these idiots, going around the world, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama at this stage. Sorry to call you an idiot, but, I gave you a chance.
I don't believe that you are sorry.
I gave the guy a chance. I mean, I did. No, I really did. I mean, on the foundation. And they're not listening, so you pay the price.
Right.
They're in the midst of a folly. I think the most Americans get it, except for the scruffies and the snowflakes. And, we're headed, the Trump train is moving in the correct direction.
Right over them.
Yeah, and frankly, some of the good ideas that the Sanders people had as well, I think are being taken on board by those trying to disrupt. I think the Trump team is not happy with the deep state at all, and with good reason. And the reforms that people were talking about on the Sanders wing are interesting. The economic program of the Sanders wing is not an economic program; it's an insanity program. But some of the concerns about freedom of the press, about reform of the criminal justice system, et cetera, that's moving in the right direction. So
Good
with that,
to know. Well, Charles, it's been another blockbuster presentation. I think it's shocking to most people to even try to comprehend the literally unending litany of corrupt organizations that are linked to the Clintons, and you've just found more. So I don't know. It's what? I don't know that there's another show on YouTube or any other venue that is just going into such depth, and you're never repeating stuff. It's always something new, something more detailed, something more focused. So thank you for doing that.
No, thanks for giving me the platform. And I think actually, I'm glad you said it that way, that this is what, if you want to succeed, in the times I've tried to succeed in things I do, you come up with something that is distinctive in a positive way. So one of the reasons a year into this that I was so interested in doing this with you is I've been searching for this type of approach, that when I would go on, Bloomberg or Fox Business or whatever, the longest I ever got on a TV show was half an hour. That's not enough time to try to tell this tale and to excite public interest in getting this fixed. So thanks for giving me the shot at doing this, and we're going to keep on keeping on.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure to do that, Charles. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this Sunday. We'll be back on Wednesday, where you will continue closing in on the most powerful and pervasive criminal syndicate that has ever existed, to my knowledge. I do want to remind people that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored resource, and I do rely on the sponsorship of the viewers to keep the company financially healthy and to keep it going. And towards that end, the latest thing that we've added are exclusive Patreon-only broadcasts that people can get by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming a sponsor. There are now 2 programs that you can watch only on Patreon, and those appear every Saturday. Myself and Quinn Michaels do a special show, and we were talking yesterday all about 5G network technology and what that's going to mean to the future, and how it relates to artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Of course, there's another new show that's only on Patreon, and that features Kevin Shipp, the former CIA officer who joins me weekly on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. That program, of course, is going to be called Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp, and Kevin is amazing. The experience that he has and the insights that he shares are really something that people owe it to themselves to see, and it's important, Charles, that people understand that I'm not putting Crowdsource the Truth behind a paywall, but some of the traditional models of trying to monetize this work, as far as putting ads on YouTube and stuff, they really don't work for what we're trying to do, because the very same people that own YouTube and the advertisers are very often affiliated with some of the criminal organizations that we're exposing. So can't really rely on that, and as many people who watch have experienced, there's a lot of troll activity. So by making it a pay service where even $1 per month allows people to watch the videos. And of course, we've just added this exciting new service of Discord chat where people can interactively get involved. I'm a little sad to see that no one was on Discord during Sunday with Charles, but of course the live chat is available in YouTube. Last night the Discord chat was quite active while Quinn and I were doing the show, and I think most people are getting involved in Discord for that. And the $5 per month sponsorship level gets you into Discord. So I'm doing these things to disrupt the techniques that the trolls are using to disseminate their message of idiotic nonsense. And it's been quite effective. So I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank you, Charles, and I will be back tomorrow. I'll see everybody then. Have a good Sunday.